In a quiet Ohio neighborhood, 19-year-old Emily sits in her wheelchair, her dreams paused by a tragic accident. Doctors have given up, but hope arrives in the most unexpected form. Jake, a skilled mechanic with a heart to help, watch as he turns despair into determination and gives Emily the chance to walk again. Like, share and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. In a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio, Emily sat in her wheelchair, staring out the window at the children playing across the street. The laughter of her peers filled the air, and she felt a deep ache in her chest. It had been nearly 2 years since the accident that had changed her life forever. At 19, she was supposed to be experiencing the freedom and excitement of youth, going to college, hanging out with friends, learning to drive, maybe even dating. Instead, she was confined to her home, reliant on her mother, Susan, for every small task. The days felt long, monotonous, and cruelly unfair. Emily had undergone countless doctor visits, physical therapy sessions, and expensive treatments, yet the results were always the same: disappointment. Doctors had exhausted every option, giving her the grim prognosis that she would likely never walk again. Susan, Emily's mother, had felt helpless from the start. She remembered the day of the accident vividly: the call from the hospital, the rush of fear and panic, and the sight of her daughter lying motionless, surrounded by machines and medical staff. Those memories haunted her, especially the moments when doctors spoke in hushed tones about Emily's limited chances of recovery. Susan had always been a fighter, refusing to accept defeat, but even her relentless determination seemed to have limits in the face of medical reality. She spent hours researching, calling specialists, and even traveling to bigger cities in hopes of finding a solution. But everywhere she turned, the answers were the same. There was no cure, no breakthrough, no miracle. Emily, for her part, had retreated inward. She spent her mornings trying to summon the energy to face the day, her afternoons staring at her reflection in the mirror, and her evenings scrolling through social media, where friends and classmates shared snapshots of their active lives. Each image was a reminder of what she had lost. She felt a mix of anger, sadness, and frustration bubbling inside her. Sometimes she lashed out at Susan in moments of despair, blaming her for not doing enough, even though she knew deep down that her mother had given everything she had. Other times, Emily would sink into silence, withdrawing into herself, feeling invisible even in her own home. One evening, after yet another exhausting day of failed therapy, Susan sat beside Emily's wheelchair and took her hand. "I know it's hard, sweetie," she said softly. "I know it feels like nothing is working, but I won't stop looking for a way to help you. I promise you that." Emily squeezed her mother's hand, but the usual spark of hope in her eyes was dim. She wanted to believe her mother, she truly did, but the weight of disappointment had grown too heavy over the years. It was difficult to imagine a world where she could stand, walk, or even move independently again. Then, late one night, Susan stumbled upon a local community forum while scrolling aimlessly on her laptop. It was a place where residents shared everything from garage sales to recommendations for local services. Among the mundane posts, a comment caught her attention. Someone mentioned a mechanic named Jake, a young man who not only repaired cars, but had a reputation for building custom devices for people with disabilities. The post described how he had helped a neighbor by modifying a wheelchair to make it easier to navigate difficult terrain. Susan's heart skipped a beat. Could this be another dead end, or could it be the chance she had been waiting for? Her mind raced with cautious optimism. The next morning, Susan made the call. Jake, 28 and working out of a modest garage in town, answered cheerfully. There was a warmth in his voice, a sense of genuine interest that immediately set Susan at ease. She explained Emily's situation, the years of failed treatments, and the doctor's bleak prognosis. Jake listened patiently, asking detailed questions about Emily's condition, her wheelchair, and her daily struggles. By the end of the conversation, he offered to come over and see Emily himself. Susan could hardly believe it. No promises, no judgment, just a sincere willingness to help. That evening, Jake arrived with his toolbox, a stack of papers, and a notebook filled with sketches and ideas. Emily watched him warily from her wheelchair as he unpacked his tools. She'd grown used to people looking at her with pity or skepticism, but Jake's eyes reflected neither. Instead, they showed curiosity, determination, and respect. He examined her wheelchair carefully, testing the brakes, the wheels, and the seat adjustments. He asked Emily to move slightly, observed her posture, and made notes. Unlike the doctors, who had focused on her limitations, Jake seemed fascinated by possibilities. He asked questions about her daily routines, what movements were difficult, and even what her dreams were. For the first time in years, Emily felt seen, not as a patient defined by her disability, but as a young woman with potential waiting to be unlocked. Susan watched silently, her heart swelling with cautious hope. She remembered all the failed attempts, the money spent, the disappointment after disappointment. And yet, there was something different about Jake. Maybe it was his energy, his belief in solutions rather than obstacles, or his creative approach to problems. Whatever it was, Susan felt a spark of optimism she hadn't felt in years. She could see it in Emily's tentative interest, the small glimmer of curiosity in her eyes as she watched Jake work. Jake spent hours sketching, testing, and brainstorming. He showed Emily some of his initial ideas, and though she was hesitant, she found herself intrigued. Could a mechanic truly offer what medical science could not? The thought seemed almost impossible, yet the sincerity in Jake's actions made it feel plausible. As night fell and he packed up to leave, Jake promised to return with a prototype he believed could give Emily more mobility and independence. Susan tucked Emily into bed that night, whispering words of encouragement, feeling a mix of hope and fear. For the first time in nearly 2 years, the possibility of walking again, of living freely, no longer seemed completely out of reach. In those quiet Ohio nights, as Emily stared at the ceiling, she let herself imagine a world where she could move without assistance, explore the neighborhood on her own, and reclaim a sense of normalcy. The road ahead would be challenging, she knew that. But the arrival of Jake, a stranger with ingenuity, patience, and a willingness to try what others had failed to do, had ignited a spark she thought was forever lost. And for Susan, witnessing her daughter's flicker of hope return, it was enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, a miracle was on the horizon. The next morning, Jake returned to Susan's house, this time with a small toolbox and several parts he had scavenged from his garage and local hardware store. Emily watched him from her wheelchair, a mix of skepticism and curiosity on her face. Over the past 2 years, she had grown accustomed to disappointment, and every new attempt at mobility ended in frustration. But there was something different about Jake, an energy and determination she hadn't seen in doctors or therapists. He greeted Emily warmly, crouching to her eye level and introducing himself properly. "Hi, Emily. I know we haven't met, but I think we can make something amazing happen here," he said, his voice confident but gentle. Emily looked at him silently, unsure whether to hope yet again. Jake began by examining her wheelchair in detail, checking the wheels, the brakes, and the frame. He asked Emily to move slightly, observing how she shifted her weight, the way her legs and torso responded, and how much control she had over her upper body. He jotted notes and sketches in a small notebook, mumbling calculations and adjustments under his breath. Susan watched silently from the kitchen doorway, a mixture of nervous anticipation and cautious optimism in her eyes. She could see the wheels turning in Jake's mind, and the focused determination on his face was almost tangible. For the first time in years, she felt that this might actually work. After hours of examining and testing, Jake turned to Emily with a small smile. "I think I have an idea," he said. "It's going to take some time, but I can build an enhancement that might give you more mobility than you've had in years." Emily's eyes widened, and for the first time, a flicker of hope returned. She couldn't help but ask cautiously, "Do you really think it will work?" Jake nodded confidently. "I can't make promises, but I know it's worth trying. You just have to trust me and give it a shot." Over the next few weeks, Jake worked tirelessly in Susan's garage, transforming it into a temporary workshop. He welded, drilled, and adjusted parts for a custom wheelchair modification that he believed could give Emily more independence. Every evening, Emily would watch as Jake carefully pieced together components, explaining his process in a way that was both educational and reassuring. Slowly, Emily began to understand the mechanics of her own mobility, learning which muscles she could use, how to balance herself, and how to maneuver the wheelchair with the new modifications. Jake's patience and encouragement gradually helped her rebuild confidence she had long thought lost. Susan observed the transformation with a mixture of awe and relief. Emily's skepticism was slowly being replaced with cautious excitement. Each small improvement, a few inches of movement, a smoother turn or better balance, brought laughter and joy back into their home. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. Emily even began to dream aloud about activities she could try once she gained more mobility, walking in the park, joining a community class, and even driving a car with adaptive controls someday. Jake listened and encouraged her, constantly reminding her that progress, no matter how small, was meaningful. One afternoon, after weeks of preparation, Jake invited Emily to test the new modifications. She wheeled herself to the garage under her mother's watchful eye, feeling both nervous and hopeful. Jake guided her through the process, demonstrating how to shift her weight, maneuver the enhanced wheelchair, and engage the new mechanical supports. Emily took a deep breath, gripped the handles, and slowly pushed herself forward. At first, the movement was tentative and awkward, but as she gained confidence, she realized she could navigate the space with far greater control than ever before. A smile spread across her face and she laughed, a sound that had been rare in the household for years. Susan's eyes welled with tears as she watched her daughter move independently, even if just a few feet at a time. The sense of liberation, though limited, was transformative. For Emily, the experience was exhilarating and overwhelming. She felt a mix of emotions, disbelief, joy, and cautious hope. For the first time in nearly 2 years, she could envision a future where she might regain some measure of independence. Jake stood nearby, adjusting minor components, offering encouragement, and celebrating each small success as if it were his own victory. His dedication and ingenuity were unlike anything Emily had encountered in her medical journey. Over the following days, Emily practiced diligently, guided by Jake and supported by her mother. Each session brought measurable improvement. She learned to maneuver tighter turns, control her speed, and even navigate over small obstacles in the driveway. The garage became a place of experimentation, laughter, and triumph. Neighbors passing by would occasionally peek in, intrigued by the activity and the determination on display. Emily's progress became a beacon of hope, showing that resilience and creativity could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. By the end of the month, Emily could navigate the garage and nearby sidewalks with confidence. Jake had not only improved her wheelchair, but had also taught her how to work with her own body, strengthening muscles and coordination that had atrophied over time. The transformation went beyond the physical. Emily's emotional state flourished as well. She was no longer the hesitant, withdrawn young woman who had stared out the window months earlier. Instead, she had regained a sense of agency, pride, and excitement about the possibilities ahead. Susan couldn't stop thanking Jake, though he insisted he had only done what he loved, helping someone in need. "You've given her more than mobility," she said one evening, tears streaming down her face. "You've given her hope." Jake smiled modestly, brushing off the praise, but it was clear he understood the significance of his work. Emily, for her part, hugged him tightly, a gesture of gratitude, respect, and newfound trust. She realized that sometimes miracles came not from medicine, but from ordinary people willing to try extraordinary things. word of Emily's progress began to spread through their Ohio community. Friends, neighbors, and even local news outlets were intrigued by the story of the mechanic who had defied expectations and helped a young woman regain independence. Emily's story inspired other families facing similar challenges, offering a glimmer of hope where despair had once dominated. Jake, though humble, became a quiet hero, proving that creativity, patience, and determination could sometimes achieve what conventional methods could not. By the end of part 2, Emily's life had shifted dramatically. While she still faced challenges, she now had the tools, guidance, and confidence to navigate her world in ways she hadn't imagined possible. The combination of Jake's mechanical genius and unwavering support, paired with Emily's courage and determination, had created a transformative experience. For Susan, seeing her daughter reclaim even a small portion of independence reaffirmed the power of hope and perseverance. And for Emily, the journey had only just begun, a journey where each day brought new opportunities, renewed dreams, and the promise of a life she could once again shape for herself. After months of dedication, Emily's life had transformed in ways she had only dreamed of. With Jake's custom wheelchair modifications and her tireless practice, she could now navigate her neighborhood's sidewalks, small ramps, and even the park near her home with minimal assistance. The sense of freedom she had longed for was slowly becoming reality. Each day she grew more confident, her movements more fluid, her independence more tangible. Susan watched with pride and relief, remembering the despair that had once consumed them. Their home, which had been quiet and somber, now echoed with laughter, lively conversation, and the occasional triumphant cheer from Emily as she accomplished a new feat. Emily's progress caught the attention of local media after a neighbor shared her story online. Soon, a small news crew arrived at their Ohio home to capture her journey. Emily was nervous at first, unsure how the world would react to her story. Yet as she recounted the challenges she had faced and the hope Jake had inspired, her voice gained strength and clarity. The interview highlighted not only her physical progress, but also the emotional resilience she had developed over the past year. Viewers across the state were moved by her determination and the creativity of the mechanic, who refused to accept the limits set by conventional medicine. Jake, ever humble, remained in the background during the media coverage. While others called him a hero, he insisted he had only used his skills to help. "Emily did all the hard work," he said modestly, brushing off the accolades. Yet Susan and Emily knew the truth. Jake's ingenuity, patience, and unwavering belief in possibilities had been the catalyst for this transformation. His approach was different from any doctor or therapist they had encountered. He treated Emily not as a patient to be fixed, but as a person capable of growth and empowerment. That perspective had made all the difference. Over time, Emily's abilities continued to expand. With additional exercises and confidence in her mobility, she began using adaptive crutches for short walks, navigating her home and the local park independently. Each small victory reinforced her sense of self-worth and determination. Her social life, which had been dormant, slowly resumed as she reconnected with friends and participated in community events. For Emily, mobility was more than a physical capability. It was the gateway to reclaiming her dreams and rebuilding a life interrupted by tragedy. The bond between Emily and Jake grew stronger, grounded in mutual respect and shared triumph. Emily admired his creative problem-solving and dedication, while Jake marveled at her perseverance and courage. Their journey together became an inspiration for those around them, showing that innovation and human connection could overcome barriers that seemed insurmountable. Emily's story also sparked conversations in the local community about accessibility, adaptive technology, and the importance of personalized solutions for people with disabilities. It was clear that her experience had a ripple effect, touching many lives beyond her own. Susan could hardly contain her emotions as she watched her daughter navigate these newfound freedoms. The once constant worry and sorrow had been replaced by pride, hope, and gratitude. She often reflected on the journey, the months of despair, the endless doctor visits, the quiet moments of frustration, and realized that every struggle had led them to this point. Jake's intervention, unconventional though it may have seemed, had provided a turning point, demonstrating that determination and creativity could defy even the most discouraging circumstances. Emily's renewed independence also influenced her long-term goals. She began considering college again, thinking about adaptive programs that could accommodate her mobility and exploring potential careers that combined her interests and abilities. The accident that once seemed like the end of her dreams now felt like a detour that had ultimately strengthened her resilience and perspective. For Emily, life was no longer about limitations, but about possibilities, about embracing opportunities she had once thought unattainable. As weeks turned into months, Emily's confidence in her abilities grew steadily. She could walk short distances with adaptive support, manage her wheelchair with ease, and even navigate challenging terrain in the park that once seemed impossible. Each small milestone brought a sense of triumph and independence that reshaped her identity. No longer defined by her disability, Emily now saw herself as capable, resilient, and determined. Jake continued to check in, offering adjustments to her equipment, guidance for exercises, and encouragement for new challenges. Their collaboration exemplified how determination and ingenuity could produce transformative results. The story of Emily and Jake also inspired other families facing similar challenges. Messages poured in from parents, teens, and local organizations asking for advice, support, and guidance. While Jake could not help everyone personally, he shared his techniques, ideas, and encouragement, spreading hope far beyond their Ohio neighborhood. Emily, too, embraced the role of motivator, sharing her journey with others and proving that even in the face of adversity, perseverance and support could lead to meaningful change. Their story became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary outcomes possible when creativity meets compassion. By the end of Part 3, Emily's transformation was profound. She had moved from despair to empowerment, from isolation to connection, and from dependence to independence. The once imposing walls of limitation had crumbled under the combined force of determination, innovation, and unwavering belief. Emily's journey, shaped by Jake's mechanical ingenuity and her own courage, illustrated the transformative power of human resilience and kindness. For Susan, watching her daughter flourish brought indescribable joy. And for Emily, every step forward, literal or metaphorical, was a testament to the extraordinary possibilities that arise when hope meets action. Life for Emily was no longer measured by what she could not do, but by the endless opportunities ahead. Each day brought new challenges, yes, but also new victories and freedoms. The accident that had once defined her now felt like a chapter in a larger story, a story of courage, ingenuity, and hope that would continue to inspire those who heard it. Through it all, Emily had reclaimed her life, proving that determination, compassion, and creativity could truly rewrite the narrative of what is possible.